Have you ever wondered what happens when you just disappear from someone's life? Now, I'm not talking about pulling back a little or giving them a bit of space. I mean completely vanishing. No texts, no calls, no contact at all, just gone. What do you think they would feel when you're no longer in their world? In a world where people seem to think they can take others for granted, where they expect people to always be there for them, we're about to flip the script. You don't need to be there anymore. Disappear and watch their world start to unravel. Welcome to what could very well be the most important video you'll watch today. Now, if you've ever been in a relationship or a situation where someone has gotten way too comfortable with treating you like an option, this video is for you. We're diving deep into a concept that's not talked about enough, but that packs some serious emotional power. What happens when you simply vanish from someone's life? By the end of this video, you'll be armed with the knowledge of 10 intense emotional stages they'll go through when you disappear. And trust me, after hearing this, you'll understand why sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to walk away and never look back. So, if you're ready to rediscover your worth and make them truly miss you like never before, drop a comment below saying, "I'm done being an option," because by the end of this video, you won't ever have to feel like one again. And stick with me until the end, because there's a bonus emotional stage, number 10, that's going to be a game changer. You don't want to miss it. Let's get started. Number 1. The sting of rejection. This is where it all begins. When you disappear, it hits them like a ton of bricks. They never expected you to vanish, not really. In their mind, you were always going to be there. You were the one putting in the effort, the one who cared. You were the person they could always count on. Until you weren't. When you disappear, it's not just about the physical absence. You're pulling away everything you represented to them. The comfort, the validation, the constant availability. And suddenly, they're faced with the harsh truth. You were the safety net they could always fall back on, until you were gone. For the first time, they realize they don't have control over you anymore. They feel rejected, and it's not the shallow, superficial kind of rejection. This hits deep. It stings hard. The truth is, they never appreciated your value until you took it away. When you were always there, it was easy for them to take you for granted. But now, they're left scrambling, trying to understand why you left without a word, wondering how they lost someone who always stuck around, no matter what. When you disappear, don't warn them. Don't tell them you're leaving. Don't give them an ultimatum. And don't ask for their attention. Just go. Go silent. This makes the rejection hit harder because it forces them to look in the mirror and finally reflect on how they treated you. Number 2. The void of missing you. Next comes the emptiness, the void. They didn't think they'd miss you, did they? They probably convinced themselves that if you left, they'd just move on easily. I'll be fine without them, they thought. But what happens when you actually disappear? They begin to feel the void. It's not just any kind of emptiness, it's a constant, aching absence. They go about their day, doing the same things they always did, but something's missing. That something was you. Now they realize how much you added to their life. You brought energy, warmth, emotional stability, things they took for granted until you were no longer around. They can try to fill the void with other distractions, new people, work or hobbies, but nothing works. The void just keeps growing. What they didn't understand before is that you were irreplaceable. They thought they could find someone else who could offer them what you did, but that's impossible. The energy you brought to their life was one of a kind. Block them, delete their number, make it impossible for them to check on you. The longer they can't reach you, the deeper that void will grow. The absence will be so loud they won't be able to ignore it. They'll start to crave the little things, the talks, the jokes, the way you made them feel understood. And when they realize you're not there to provide it anymore, that's when the true emotional weight hits. Number 3. Overwhelming curiosity. This is where things get really intense. Once the void sinks in, something else kicks in: curiosity. They start to get desperate to know what's going on in your life. Where are you? What are you doing? Who are you with? These are the questions that will start to consume them. The irony is that they might have spent so much time telling themselves they didn't need you, and now they're obsessed with finding out everything about you. In a world where everyone shares their life on social media, you're now a mystery, and nothing is more unsettling than not knowing what's happening with someone who was once so close. They'll check your Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever platform they can. But here's the kicker: you've gone dark. No updates, no posts, no stories. And that silence, it drives them crazy. Human beings hate the unknown. Without access to you, they'll start spiraling. Are you seeing someone else? Are you better off without them? These questions haunt them. Let them stew in their curiosity. Don't give them any answers. Don't post anything that could give them a clue. You become the one thing they can't stop thinking about. Their curiosity will turn into obsession. They'll ask mutual friends about you, trying to dig for any information they can, but they'll never admit they care. They'll keep pretending they don't. The truth is, they can't handle not knowing. The more they search for answers, the more they realize you're not giving them any, and that's when they start to panic. Number 4. Deep self-reflection. Now we're entering dangerous territory for them. This is when the real self-reflection kicks in, and trust me, it's not pretty. After days or even weeks of wondering where you are, what you're doing and why you left, they finally begin to look inward. They start asking themselves the tough questions. Was I too distant? Was I too cold? Did I push them away? Did I mess this up? Regret creeps in slowly, and it's a bitter pill to swallow. Here's the truth: people don't like to admit when they've made mistakes. It's human nature, but when you disappear, you force them to confront their mistakes head on. There's no you to reassure them, no you to smooth things over. All they're left with is their own behavior, and that's not a fun place to be. They start replaying every interaction in their mind, questioning whether they could have done things differently. They remember the times they ignored your texts, brushed off your feelings, or treated you like an afterthought. It hits them hard because deep down they realize they had a good thing going, and they took it for granted. Now they're left alone with their thoughts, and those thoughts, they're brutal. This stage is especially powerful because it's internal. They can't blame you anymore. You're not around to argue with or make excuses for them. The only person they can blame is themselves. That realization is a tough pill to swallow. The self-reflection only deepens over time. The more they reflect, the more they realize how much they messed up. Guilt builds, and they begin wishing they could go back in time to fix things. But here's the problem: it's too late now. During this stage, don't reach out. Don't try to explain why you left or make them understand the error of their ways. Let them figure it out on their own. The power of self-reflection is strongest when it happens internally. The more time they spend reflecting, the more they'll realize they were the ones who messed things up. Let them sit with that guilt. It's a valuable lesson they need to learn. Number 5. The urge to pursue you. After enough time in self-reflection, something shifts inside them. They stop questioning their actions and begin to focus on one thing: getting you back. The tables have turned. You were once the one chasing, but now it's their turn. They can't stop thinking about you. They can't stop wondering if it's too late to make things right. The urge to pursue you becomes overwhelming. They'll start sending those "I've been thinking about you" texts. They'll like your old Instagram posts, maybe even comment on something to see if you'll respond. They might send a late-night message after a few drinks, hoping to rekindle what was lost. Here's the kicker. They're chasing you now. They've gone from taking you for granted to desperately wanting you back. And now you hold all the power. You see, the urge to pursue you is strong, but you don't have to respond. In fact, you shouldn't. Let them feel the desperation. Let them wonder if you've moved on. The more they pursue, the more they'll realize they've lost control of the situation. They no longer hold the upper hand, and that drives them crazy. When they start chasing, don't give in. The moment you respond, the power shifts back to them. You've worked hard to reclaim your worth, and now is not the time to give that away. Let them pursue, but don't reward their efforts. Silence is your strongest tool here. Let them feel the frustration of wanting something they can no longer have. Number 6. The battle between relief and regret. At first, when you disappear, they might feel a brief sense of relief. It's that momentary feeling of freedom. They think to themselves, finally, I don't have to deal with them anymore. For a moment, they might even feel good about it. But here's the truth about that so-called freedom. It's an illusion. It feels exciting at first, but it's superficial and temporary. They go out, hang with their friends, maybe swipe right a few times on dating apps, and for a while they convince themselves that everything's going to be okay. But then, when they're alone, sitting in their quiet apartment or scrolling through their phone, that's when the regret starts creeping in. They begin to realize that freedom without you is actually just emptiness. The people they thought could replace you, they're just surface-level distractions. It's like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. It feels like a solution, but all it does is leave them more dehydrated, more desperate, and more empty than before. Number 7. The desire to play the game. Once regret settles in, they panic. They want to control the situation again, but they're at a loss. So, what do? They try to play games. They act distant on purpose, hoping it will make you jealous. They post photos with other people, trying to make it look like they're happy without you. Maybe they'll post a cryptic status or a selfie that feels a little too forced. Anything to reel you back in and make you wonder what they're up to. But here's the thing, you're not playing anymore. You've outgrown those games. You've moved past the childish behavior of manipulating emotions, and you've stopped noticing their petty attempts to provoke a reaction. People think that manipulation through jealousy or playing hard to get will make you chase after them. But what happens when you've stopped chasing? What happens when you've grown tired of the game? They throw everything at you. Subtle digs, passive-aggressive comments, exaggerated posts on social media. But none of it works because you're not engaging. You see, their game only works if you play along. The moment you stop responding, it's the moment they realize they've lost their power over you. The silence is deafening to them. It drives them mad that they can no longer manipulate you. Don't engage. Ignore the cryptic posts. Don't react to the photos. Their game is futile when you're not giving them the attention they crave. Number 8. The crushing weight of silence. Silence is one of your most powerful tools when you disappear. Your absence, your lack of words, texts, and presence speaks louder than anything you could ever say. It leaves them alone with their thoughts. This is where it gets tough for them. The silence becomes unbearable. It weighs on them. They start to reflect on all the times they ignored your calls, dismissed your texts, or didn't put in the effort when they had the chance. Now, they would do anything to hear from you again. For someone who's used to controlling the situation, silence is torturous. They expect you to reach out, to ask what's wrong, or to beg for an explanation. But when you don't, when you disappear, leaving them in silence, that's when they start to panic. Every minute without a word from you feels like an eternity. They spiral because they're used to the constant noise, the back and forth, even the arguments. But silence is deafening. Let your silence be your power. Don't break it. Don't explain yourself. Let them feel the weight of their own actions through the absence of your words. They'll soon realize that losing access to you is far worse than any argument or misunderstanding they could have had. Number 9. The fear that brings them crawling back, and then comes the fear, the part they never saw coming. For so long they were comfortable, thinking you'd always be there. They took your presence for granted, believing you were the one who would stick around no matter what. But now you're gone, and they're terrified. The fear sets in. What if they've lost you for good? What if you've moved on to someone else? The thought of you being with someone new consumes their mind. They'll imagine you laughing with someone else, making memories with someone else, and the idea of it makes them sick to their stomach. Now, they're not worried about their pride or their ego anymore. All they care about is getting you back. This fear drives them to do things they swore they'd never do. They'll reach out, they'll apologize, they'll beg. Maybe they'll send long messages explaining how they didn't appreciate you before, but now they realize how much you meant to them. Or they might show up at your door unannounced, hoping for a second chance. But here's the truth. By the time they feel this fear, you've already moved on. You've found your strength, your independence. You no longer need them. Their fear is real, but it's too late. When they come crawling back, don't give them a second chance just because they're afraid. Let them face the consequences of their actions. You've already moved on, and they need to learn that you're not an option to be taken for granted. Number 10, the realization of emotional independence. This is where everything comes full circle, the realization of your emotional independence. When you disappear, you're not just walking away from them, you're walking toward your own freedom, your own emotional clarity, and your peace. In many relationships, we get so caught up in making the other person happy and proving our worth that we forget about our own needs. We forget that we have the power to choose, to walk away and demand better for ourselves. But once you vanish, once you reclaim your space, you start to see things more clearly. You no longer need their validation. You no longer care what they think, how they feel, or what they want. You've realized that your happiness isn't tied to them. And that's the most powerful thing you can experience. Here's the best part. They feel it too. They can sense that you've outgrown them. You're stronger now, wiser, more confident. They realize you no longer need them to feel complete. The tables have turned for good. While they're stuck in the same old patterns, you've evolved. You've broken free from the cycle of seeking validation, and now their opinion means nothing to you. Own your emotional independence. Don't go back to the old ways. Don't give them the satisfaction of thinking they still have control over your happiness. You've moved beyond that, and that's your biggest win.